Making It Work is brought to you by Wealthsimple, which gives everyone access to simple, affordable investing on cruise control.
I'm going to start by saying this. Saving money sends a shiver down my spine. In a good way. Since I started working when I was a teenager, I would get a paycheck, take out enough for gas and a few froyo trips, and deposit the rest into a savings account. It's just always been ingrained in me to have something to fall back on. I never wanted to be stressed out about money, so I focused early on having an emergency fund. My initial savings goal was to have at least $1,000 in my account at all times. My goal setting ended up snowballing and paving the way for new goals, and by the time I was 25, there was $50,000 in my account. And while I've had some privileges others do not, I'm coming from a place of no windfalls, no smart investing pre-recession, and no free college. A little about my situation. During this time of extreme saving, I was living at my parents', and I was also never making more than $15 an hour. My underemployment is a story for another time, but I did want to show you what I was working with. It's easy to save $20,000 a year when you're making $70,000, but I was making about half of that. No one's story is the same. The ways I saved money may not line up for how other people want to live their lives. So this is just what worked for me. And I hope people can take some of my ideas and make it work for their savings goals. Number 1, I put in the work. You might have been looking for some magic story of me just stumbling upon $50,000. But the formula for saving is pretty basic. Make more, spend less. I focused my energy on making more. As I mentioned, I was underemployed and grossly underpaid for my industry, so I looked for supplemental work anywhere I could. My main moneymaker during this time was babysitting. I took hours whenever I could, during evenings and weekends, about 20 to 25 hours a week on average. If hanging out with kids isn't for you, look into bartending or find a freelance side hustle that aligns with your skill set. Number 2, I left my ego at the door. If you're setting yourself up for a better future, there's no room for a big ego. No one is ever too good for a second job or a roommate. So let's talk about my one major benefit. I lived with my parents, which was probably the biggest key in how I saved so much so fast. We lived on a direct transit line, and my transportation costs were $180 a month. I know living at home isn't an option for many people, but if it's available to you, seriously consider it. I still paid for my own food and gave my parents money for utilities. You're not a loser for living at home or in a suburban area with 4 roommates in order to save money. Number 3, I asked, do I really need that? I know we're all sick of hearing about the latte factor. It was kind of impossible for me to cut back on buying coffees when I'd never bought one in the first place. But I do think you should track your spending so you can notice unnecessary habits. Take a look at your last 15 transactions. You'll probably notice a pattern of what's adding up and what you can live without. For me, it was fast food. I easily cut out $150 a month by only getting it once a month instead of multiple times a week. I instead took to cooking at home and meal prepping. Being mindful of your spending is so important when saving big. I avoided temptation by unsubscribing from brand emails, and I would not step foot into a discount department store unless I went in with a list. I would always wait a week when buying clothes online to make sure I still really wanted them. And I still vacationed, but stuck to weekend getaway road trips. Number 4, I still had a life. I know what you're thinking. She probably has no friends, never left her house, and never had fun. But during this time, I still stayed social, went to concerts, and even traveled a bit. You don't need to say yes to every invite, but you also don't need to live under a rock. You can still have fun with friends without doing a $50 boozy brunch every weekend. Before going to a bar, I'd have a glass of wine, then limit myself to 2 drinks while I was there. I'd also stick with cash because credit cards make it tempting to keep ordering drinks and food. Number 5, I paid savings like a bill. Each month, I had a goal set aside to save at least $300 specifically for savings. Pick an amount that works with your budget and pay that amount into savings as if it were a bill. Would you skip your car or utility bill? No. Savings is just as important. I paid into my savings goal and then added whatever I had left over after expenses each month. My savings quickly added up, and it became almost a game for me to constantly up my goal. Once I got my new, higher-paying job, I kept my savings habits the same. I'm not as extreme now, and I have eased up on some of the side hustles. I'm so happy where I am with my savings, and I'm now focusing on investing and growing what I have even more. Is my way going to work for everyone? No, but you can find a balance that lets you enjoy life while still being smart about your future.
One of the best ways to be smart about your own future is to get in on the investing game as early as possible. With a company like Wealthsimple, it can be a lot easier than you think. Wealthsimple is online investing that's as simple and human as it gets. In just 5 minutes, they'll build you a custom portfolio to fit your personal goals and timeline. Just answer a few easy questions and they'll manage your money for you on autopilot. Set it, forget it, and let your money grow in the background. You can turn on automatic deposits as well as set up a smart savings account with higher rates than big banks for your shorter-term goals, your wedding, your next great adventure, or that handbag you need. They also have a socially responsible portfolio that invests in green stocks and companies that support gender diversity. The fees are much lower than big banks, and TFD viewers get a $50 cash bonus for getting started. Check them out at wealthsimple.com/TFD or use the link in our description. There are no account minimums and it only takes a few minutes to start. No excuses.